All right, good afternoon, everybody. I am using a microphone not because I'm not loud, but because we are live streaming this, and so we know there's some people at home, and with the live stream, this provides much better quality than if it's just me talking. So thanks for joining us for the State of the School. I actually want to jump to the second slide as right here. If anybody is needing of translation services, you can have this opportunity. This is something that Bill Selleck and the tech team has added this year, and hopefully is serving families well. So if you've used it at other events, or if you use it today, let us know how it's working. But we are excited to be able to provide that service for people. So For those of you who've been around a while, know that for a long time, I have been saying we are nearly 90 years old. Hillbrook was founded in 1935. We are 90 years old. We no longer have to say nearly. And this is, again, people who know me, if you over here, there's a history timeline, which is actually one of the first things that I did when I arrived at Hillbrook. I've always felt a strong connection to history, and actually one of my draws to this school was the history of the school. And don't worry, I won't spend lots of time talking to you about the history of the school today. But when I think back on that history, and you think back to 1935, one of the things that strikes me, and I actually said this to a group of prospective upper school families the other day at a fireside chat, is the ideas that brought that group together. And so for those who don't know, the school was founded, 14 students, wards of the state. They either didn't have parents or their parents weren't able to take care of them. So it was a boarding school, like 14 children on this campus. And the idea was that every child given the right opportunity and given possibilities could do anything and could thrive. And this was at a time, mid-1930s, where there was lots of conversation about social Darwinism and genetics and the idea that like you are who you are and you can't change that. And of course, in particular around like race and class and all of those things. And so from the beginning, this is a school that didn't believe in that. They believed in the sense of possibility. And I think very much 90 years later, we are a very different school, right? 3 divisions, 2 campuses, 1 school. We do not look like 14 students on one little campus, but we remain very much who we were then, and this sense of possibility. I also have the opportunity, one of the things I get to do is talk to alum families, at various moments, and recently I've connected with a handful of alum families. One who was here in the 70s and 80s, and then one who was here in the late 90s, early 2000s. And talking to them, and we were talking a little bit about the high school and like, oh, isn't this interesting, this new thing, which long after you left, this happened. But very quickly, as you would expect, they wanted to know, like, so what is it like, on the Los Gatos campus? And the 2 things that they wanted to know, one was, is this still the sense that like every child is known and valued as an individual? And I said very confidently, yes, that is still very much who we are. And then what do you think the second one was? Are they still telling jokes at Flag? So I said, yes, we're still telling jokes at Flag. So 90 years later, we are building and changing and growing, and yet who we are remains the same. And so, I always like to start off by grounding us in our core values. Our vision inspire students to achieve their dreams and reach beyond themselves to make a difference in the world. And then again, of course, as we've started to say more and more these last few years, that 3 divisions, 2 campuses, 1 school. And it's really important that as we expand and as this exciting moment, as we become a JK-12 and you'll hear me talk about all the different things that are happening across the school, not just at the high school, because we are becoming a JK-12, but we remain very much one school and held together by those ideas that brought together people 90 years ago on this campus. So we're gonna focus today on Vision 2030. And for those of you who have been around for a few years, we created Vision 2030 2 years ago. We spent a full year meeting community together, board members, leaders, teachers, everybody came together to talk about what should be the priorities for the school for this period. And we set 2030 as it felt like a good year, in part because it was an even year. So it's always nice to do these things around even years. The previous strategic plans were Vision 2015 and Vision 2020. I particularly liked 2020. That had kind of a, but 2030. But the piece to this is that if you think about it, it was a 7-year stretch. And what we liked about that is that the first year of that would be the first year that we had an upper school. And then the final year of that would be the first year that we graduated a class that had been through 4 years of a full high school. So if you think about that, that freshman class, year 4, will be the first group that every year the high school will have been full. And so it felt like a nice moment to be like, by this point, like that's a significant moment in this growth. And so what does it look like over these next 7 years as a school? What are the things that we should be prioritizing? So coming out of those conversations were kind of 3 broad pillars. One was to prioritize balanced excellence. The second is to make Hillbrook a community hub. And then the third is to broaden our impact. So I'm gonna take a little bit of time. I'm gonna talk about prioritizing balanced excellence and try to make, particularly today, try to help you make sense of what that means. I've had more than one person say, what does that actually mean? So we're gonna talk a little bit about and talk through some examples of how that plays out across the JK-12. Colleen's gonna talk a little bit about how we are continuing to create this sense of a community hub, how we're trying to grow that, and then I'll finish it up a little bit around broadening our impact. So balanced excellence, as we've been talking about it, we think kind of includes 3 components. We're talking about purpose, challenge, and pathways. And so first of all, purpose. We actually talk a lot about this as a school, and we talk a lot, what does it mean to have purpose? And so I think when we talk about it in this context, there's both the sense of like giving students purpose, and by that we mean meaning. And so oftentimes that looks like an answer to what matters to you and what are you doing about it, right? Like that's like, what do you care about? It also can, as you'll hear as I talk a little bit today, come back to like providing real world experiences so that if you think back on your own educational experience, there's those moments when you were in class and you were learning something, you had no idea like why, like, the classic question of like, why am I learning this? There are moments where that has to happen, right? Like there are certainly skills and things that children need to learn that require that moment of like, trust me, this will pay off later. But for the most part, we know that quality education, meaningful education is tied to purpose and helping students understand that. So I'm gonna share some examples of what purpose looks like here at Hillbrook. Second of all, challenge. Like the simplest way to put this is we know that children and students can do hard things. And so we're committed to helping them do that. We're helping to, like, we think about the rubber band. You wanna make sure they're stretched, they're pulled, but that they don't break. And so like, how do you create the educational environment in which that's happening as often as possible? It's not happening every minute of every day. If you imagine yourself being pushed every minute of every day, that would be exhausting. But how do you do it on a regular basis in a classroom and knowing that you serve a broad range of students, like every school serves a broad range. Any school who tells you they don't are lying. Right? Like every child is different. So you need to figure out how do you connect with each student and each, as they're going through your school. And then finally, pathways. And again, I'll talk about this across, and I think it particularly makes sense as you look at some of the older grades and you start to see the variety of ways that students are able to take and pursue different pathways in both around interest and then also around advanced work. So why does this matter? I've been sharing this a lot lately at open houses, actually, with prospective families. So Challenge Success, how many people have heard of Challenge Success? Is there some of you? Okay, so Challenge Success is an organization out of Stanford University. Yeah, all the educators in the front, have heard of it? Challenge Success is an organization out of Stanford University founded by a woman named Denise Pope, who's a Stanford professor. And she wrote a book back in the early 2000s called Doing School, in which she spent a lot of time with students at Pally and Gunn, high school students, super high achieving kids who were burnt out, had totally disconnected from school, and deeply unhappy. And she was trying to make sense of that. And so coming out of her book, Doing School, she created this organization which is looking at kind of wellness, engagement, and belonging in schools. Like, how do you create schools that capture those 3 things? And over those years, and they continue to do surveys. So this survey is actually from I think 2 years ago, I think was the date on this survey. And this is a survey, to be clear, of like top schools. Like Challenge Success schools are mostly like high performing schools, independent schools, top public schools. So this survey to me is like deeply concerning. And in particular, there's the sleep deprivation, there's the exhaustion, but this third one is the one that actually has really stuck with me. And this is like nearly 50% put forth effort. So they're doing fine, like they're doing well, but they have rarely or never felt engaged or enjoyed school. Like that's a stunning thing for a student. These are high school students, right? So it's a stunning thing for a high school student to say. And so this is why it matters that you have purpose and challenge and pathways, that you create school environments. And I'm confident, definitely wouldn't be 50%. I'm confident that our high school students wouldn't describe their education as, they're not engaged every moment of every day, but they would not, Mike's like, wait, but I am confident that our students would never describe school this way. And we think about that, and it matters, right? Because this is what's happening in so many other schools around the Bay Area and around the country. So let's take a moment to go through and go through each of the divisions, and I'll give you kind of some examples of ways that these play out and that you would see them on school. So first of all, purpose. Some of you have fourth graders. One of my favorite projects, and this is actually an older project, is the Oak Woodlands project. And it was started a number of years ago by Laura Blum, is now taught by Jenny Jones and the fourth grade team, and has kind of grown and expand. But it's at its simplest level, and in terms of this conversation around purpose, it's a place-based program. And so that matters, right? So like so the students are learning, like we are in Oak Woodland. If it's not clear to people, this campus is an Oak Woodland environment. So the students are learning about where they are, which immediately creates a sense of like meaning, like, oh, like I'm learning about the campus that I'm actually on. And so what does that look like? They're adopting trees. There's 3 different types of oak trees, and so they're adopting one of the oak trees and spending time like watching that oak tree and learning about that oak tree. They're studying the animals that live in Oak Woodlands, doing some birding. They are talking about like the ecosystem. They're talking about the early peoples in Oak Woodlands. And so you have this like very engaging real world experience where they're both out of the classroom and then they're creating these really interesting reports. And then one of my favorite parts of this is that they then take acorns. And for those who don't know, acorns in like their raw form are actually not edible. They'll make you sick because they have tannic acid in them. And so what they do is they learn about that. They learn about tannic acid, and then they actually peel apart the acorn, put it in water, leach all the tannins out of it, and then turn it into flour and make pancakes. And so the end of the project is they're making acorn pancakes at the end of the unit. This is a wonderful example to me of a purpose-driven curriculum, one in which students can again see the world around them and kind of how they fit into it, and it's also fun, which is important particularly when you're in lower school. Challenge. Over the last couple of years, we have adopted a curriculum across 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade called Wit and Wisdom. And Wit and Wisdom is a program that actually teachers had kind of explored and were really excited to bring in large part because they felt like it really increased the challenge that we were able to provide in our literacy, in our reading and writing in the lower school program. And there was 2 things. This is a program, and you'll probably hear me say this a couple times today, but this is a program that has like what we call like a low floor, either high or no ceiling, depending on how you want to say it, experience, so that this is accessible to a broad range of students, but it also then doesn't stop students. Like for the kid who wants to go, or the teacher wants to push them, they can do that. And so, again, in terms of the Wit and Wisdom, talk a little bit about happens to be 4th grade again. They have an interesting unit that they just did on great-heartedness. And one of the things that Sam Butler, who's the 4th grade teacher, or one of the 4th grade teachers, was saying to me the other day is there's a couple things that strike her. One is the level of concepts that the students are studying are really advanced. So they're doing a pretty advanced study of the circulatory system, and they're learning all of the terms and the names. And it's like the literal heart, and they talk about that. We're learning about the literal heart, and then they're talking about the figurative. And so then they read a story by Sharon Creech called what's the name of the story? Love That Dog. Sorry, yeah. Thank you. Love That Dog, which is actually, I have read this. Love That Dog is a great story. Like every children's animal story, it's sad. You know what that means. But But it's a combination of prose and poetry. It actually references like famous poems, and so it's a chance to kind of like connect to poetry. And what Sam said is it's this really great program that is doing very, very deep thinking, and then it's a very structured writing that ends up with these students writing 5-paragraph essays as 4th graders. So again, so this is a great example of how and this is something we've been talking a lot about, is like how can we increase the challenge across our literacy program. And the final example for the lower school is around pathways. And so, as hopefully most of you who have lower schools know, across the lower school we have different options for challenge groups in math. And so in the JKK space, it's spicy math, and as you get a little bit older, these are opt-in groups, and they are mixed up so that some students join occasionally, some students join all the time. Occasionally a teacher will be like, hey, I think you should join this, so sometimes we'll push a kid in there. But these are this great opportunity to create pathways for kids who want to push themselves in math and want a little bit more about math. A piece of this, and if you think about it more, I guess, from the strategic level as a school, partly what's driving this is that we have challenge coaches. So, several years ago, we created a structure in which Kelly Skulton, Jenny Jones, Ilse Doman, our chief academic officer, also plays this role as well, of an actual challenge coach structure. And so, we know that it's important to think about that intentionally, and then how do we do that? All this talking, I need water. So in middle school, if you think about purpose, again, another one of these interdisciplinary units, the 7th grade wildfire studies. And for those of you who were at Flag last Friday, not today, but a week ago, the 7th graders actually showed some of the videos that they made. The quick story on this, and again, it's a place-based and also real-world event-driven program. It came out of the fires that happened back in 2020, the CZU fires, which of course, impacted families here, impacted everybody here in terms of smoke quality, smoke and air quality. And Brian Revisa recognized an opportunity, the 7th grade science teacher, to kind of take that a little bit deeper. And so Brian has a full unit around fire, how does fire happen, combustibility, air quality, all of the scientific pieces of different ecosystems. And then in English, Molly Brown has students reading a variety of different books. There's a fictional book, which is about a boy who has to survive a wildfire, and then there's 2 nonfiction books. One is about the 2017 Napa fire, and then the other is about climate change and includes fire as kind of like a piece of climate change. So in terms of this project, they also then extended it beyond the campus, so there was certainly conversation here on campus, but then they also visited with the Cal Fire Department up on the summit, and had a chance to kind of meet some of the people who have been fighting these fires, and then they also had an opportunity to go visit Big Basin, which now is 4 years removed from the fire, and actually spend time there, see how it's coming back, have some experts talking to them about wildlife and what happened to the wildlife. All of this from a purpose lens, all of this is very real, right? These are real things that are impacting these students, impacting our students, and of course impacting our community. The project that they end with is a video which they create, which is they take expert ideas and then try to make it accessible to other students. And so the idea is to create a video that another 13 or 14-year-old would be able to watch and understand. And those are submitted, and they're produced for a public audience. And so it's a real world, again, kind of taking the step up from what was happening in 4th grade. It's these now are being sent out into the world. And so there's a whole group of our students have been doing this now for the past few years. A few of them have won awards. And just as importantly, perhaps more importantly, all of them have had a chance to have a real audience. They've also, one of the things Brian named for me was that as they do this, they get feedback from experts. And so as they've worked with some of these people, they have the students then send the videos to say the Cal Fire team and say, hey, can you provide some feedback? And Brian talked about the value of having the students actually take feedback and make changes, which for any of you who have students in 7th grade, it's actually a skill, and it's also something that they're sometimes hesitant to do. So again, that opportunity to make this real outside provides a sense of purpose. challenge. The fifth grade book club. This is kind of a quick one, but Ilse Doman has been playing around in fifth grade with an equivalent idea to the math challenge groups, but with literacy. And so she's been doing this now for the last few months, inviting fifth graders to do some extension reading. And so it's been, as you can see, they were hanging out in the sun, enjoying the weather, and it's been a chance for some kids to make that decision. And so that's something we're kind of exploring and kind of seeing where that goes. And then finally, in terms of pathways, one of the great benefits of adding an upper school has been the chance to dramatically strengthen our math pathways from 7th grade through 12th grade. And so what this shows you, the green boxes are all of the classes that are currently being taught. And so you can see, in 7th grade, we have 3 levels, including some students who are taking Upper School Math 1. That class is actually taught by the upper school teacher on this campus. Last year it was taught by the upper school teacher on the other campus, but this year we were able to get the teacher to come to this campus. And then, moving up, you can see the broad range of math classes that are being taught in the upper school. And again, particularly in terms the middle school, this has been a really positive opportunity to strengthen our math program and to really create also partnerships with, we have some very high level math teachers now who are able to partner back with our middle school teachers who are also very talented math teachers. And it's just, but one of the challenges in a JK8 is that it's hard to create the kind of sense of departments that you have. So like the math department, the English department, the science department, it's like 2 people or 3 people in just a middle school, standalone middle school. So again, this is one of these benefits that's helping on both sides. It helps the upper school teachers, and then it also helps the middle school teachers. And finally, at the upper school. The school year starts and then ends in the upper school with something called immersives. So there are 3-week interdisciplinary courses that are transcripted. These are graded transcripted courses. And they are heavily purpose-driven. I taught one this fall for 10th graders on the First Amendment, which was really fun. And there's some people in this crowd who helped join that activity with me, Mattia, who helped out with it. The one I'm going to talk about right now is, in terms of purpose, is one of our favorite examples of what this can look like came out of immersive last spring, where the 9th graders went to Alaska. And they went to a place called the Tidelines Institute, which is an organization that is working on scientific research around climate. And what's interesting, and again, in terms of purpose in this case, what we're really looking at is that here's now the opportunity for students to all have a similar experience, ask the same questions, and yet end up then in very different places, and provide very different examples of what that can look like, how they answered that question, and how they were able to pursue their interest. So the first example, Kyle is somebody who was fascinated by hydroelectric power, and so at the Tidelines Institute, it's all powered by hydroelectric power. And so they saw the system and they saw the structure and they learned about it while they were on the site. And one of the questions that they were asked was how does social impact emerge from place? And so Kyle was like, well, that's kind of interesting. And he went back and he spent 2 weeks trying to figure out how to design his own his own electric power model. And it's the videos watching this process are fabulous. As you can see, it was really hard, trying to do this, and then the complexity, and then watching him as he would succeed and make various steps along the way. And so this was one model. This was the result for one student. Another student, totally different interest, and she was driven by kind of 2 questions, what matters to others and why leave home. And so Yara became attached, the child of the person who runs the center. Yara kind of connected with this kid, and there were conversations about leaving home and and how that felt and how that's scary and what does that mean. And so Yara, in response to that, wrote a children's story for this child to share back what does it look like to leave home and how does that play out. And then the last one, another variation on why leave home, was Chloe. And Chloe was really interested in whale migration. and talking about like why leave home. And of course now like that's a totally different way to think about why leave home. Now we're not talking about humans, we're talking about whales. But one of my favorite lines, and I'm gonna read this, is starting off the week, I planned on writing an essay that used whales as direct symbolism for why humans leave home. Over the course of the week, my plan morphed into using the migratory cycles of whales and why they leave home as a role model for humanity. Instead of ignoring the world around us and being purposefully unobservant as a price for progress, we should embrace how whales listen to the world around them and themselves. And so I loved, part of what I love about that, and this is a sidebar, but Unruler is a system that we use to have kids reflect on their work. And it's just that, like her ability to like think about what she was doing and to think about what she's learning. In addition, she then created a very lengthy 15 or 20 page, very detailed, very lengthy study of whale migration. You know, it's a really interesting process. And again, it comes back to this sense of purpose. Like they went to a place, this is again, place-based, right? They went to this amazing place in Alaska, and then they were allowed to kind of pursue their passion coming out of that. Challenge, I'm going to talk a little bit about our advanced science class at upper school, and Mike Judge. So first I'm actually going to mention, so in ninth grade science, Mike Judge is doing a masterful job of creating science projects that are tied to downtown San Jose. This is one of those where like the Oak Woodlands always made sense to me. Like of course on a beautiful campus like this you can talk about nature and place. It wasn't obvious to me like what you would do with science in an urban environment. So Mike has done a couple different things, but in particular, this year, this is a map right here, the high school's right here, in this area. And what Mike is looking at, and the students are looking at, is they are collecting micro particulates from the various areas right on the drains and the street. And they're doing it multiple times over the course of the year. So they did it before the rains, and then when the rains came, they did it after the rains, and they're tracking the presence of the microparticulates, and then the impact that has on the waterways. So that's like the basic science is really interesting, and so they're doing kind of some of this basic data analysis. So then the sophomores, as part of an independent research project, are looking at so these were like primary data sets that they were using, like they're pulling their own research. The sophomores were looking now, a small group of sophomores who chose to be part of this, at some secondary data resources. And they were looking at health data and then data from a geographic location. So again, same idea of like this first one, it's like you're actually tagging data from a particular location, but trying to see if they could find correlations across the health data and a location. And so for example, one of the projects was looking at like low birth weight versus, I think it was, I can't actually read, I think it was air pollution, but low birth weight versus air pollution in the Bay Area. Other groups were looking at like LA and other areas and talking about other kind of trying to draw these two things together. And so it's a great example of like how Mike is creating like both at the entry level, but also then these opportunities for students who want to go further. They have a science club, which is a group kids totally opt into, and that group is in the process of, last year they produced a paper and competed, and they're in a process of taking some of that ninth grade data and turning that into a science paper to turn in. So again, this is a great example of how like students who really want to go far can go far. All of the students are getting a really interesting scientific program. And then finally, pathways. Global Online Academy is a system that we used this fall for all of our 10th graders. And it was an elective course, and you can see the broad range of electives that they were able to take. These are online classes. The teachers are around the world, the students are around the world, and it was a really, students all in Middle East, South Korea, Japan, China, across the town in San Jose. There's some kids from like Harker and some of the other schools in the immediate area, Pasadena. So this opportunity to engage with a broad range of people, but then an opportunity to pursue something that they were really excited about. And in particular, one of the examples Rebecca, and her presentation in the end was they took about 50 of like 20,000 or something. It's like the huge number. Like 50 of them were selected to kind of be highlighted. And so Rebecca was one of the ones that was highlighted. She was doing, she was one of the students doing the data visualization. And her topic was, is climate change causing more natural disasters? And she did a whole presentation, and you can access that online if you want. But all of the students, I think, found that as kind of an interesting way to learn. Not all of them loved it, but it was an interesting, and again, one of these pathways, different ways and different choices for students. So the other place that balanced excellence plays out, and is that in the arts and the athletics arguments. We have a debate team now, but in the co-curricular programs, and again, this is particularly across our middle school and our upper school. Those of you who've been at Flag in the, on this campus, our athletic program is really competitive. We have some great basketball teams. We had one of the 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade girls volleyball championship in the fall was some of the best volleyball I have ever seen. They lost, but it was really close, and both teams were exceptional. We have a really strong athletic program that's developing on this campus, and we also then are equally developing a strong program on the upper school campus. And so those things tie together. Like the fact that we have that upper school is helping us strengthen the work that we're doing across the middle school. We have growing theater programs, music programs. Hopefully people have heard about the new band. Some of you were there last night for the the fabulous winter concert. Those are things that are happening again on both of our campuses. And one of the beautiful things that's happening is you have like Christian Engineer who's overseeing the JK-12 program. And so you have somebody who's bringing cohesion, but also then bringing more and more options, particularly at the middle school level, so that we're really seeing an enhancement at the middle school. We have a debate team in the upper school that's competing. We're now offering that in the middle school. Robotics team at the upper school that's competing. We will be offering that in the middle school as well. And so you're just, like these types of programs, these are core to the student experience, right? Like these are not afterthoughts. Like this is often, again, think back to your own, particularly high school experience. Probably one of the main things you think about are kind of what were some of these co-curriculars that you're doing. And so we are thinking a lot about like how do you create a rich array of co-curriculars for students to participate in. And then finally, in this section, we continue to expand our Reach Beyond programs, and the Scott Center and that work over the last 7 years has just transformed the type of experiences that we're able to provide our students. And so, again, starting with the lower school, we are going to have our first ever Reach Beyond Day on Thursday, March 20th. And you'll be hearing from the different classes we'll be sharing as an exhibition of learning some of the things that they have been doing in lower school. 3rd grade will be doing some models of playgrounds, of accessible playgrounds, and I'll talk a little bit in a moment about where that comes from. But that 3rd grade unit, kindergartners are talking about I think recycling, and 1st graders are building blankets and talking about caring for others. So you'll see a real sense of like what does that look like at the youngest ages, to like kind of ask these questions: what matters to you, and what are you doing about it? And then when you head to the middle school, as all of you who have middle schoolers know, we have this incredible array of Reach Beyond Week experiences. And this year, a couple to draw a note to, selfishly, I'm going on the Atlanta and Selma trip. But so for years, we've talked about doing a journey down south and to really study the civil rights. We actually have a 7th grade parent, Tony Francis, who is from that area, where he knows the mayor of Montgomery. So we're going to get to meet the mayor and really kind of travel back and study the civil rights movement. The Hawaii trip is also really exciting. That is our first ever Reach Beyond Week trip that's coming out of a social impact and leadership project. And so there's some students who were talking about the Maui fires, and then an opportunity to go and visit that and learn about how they're restoring. And again, these are all students who also had a chance to study fire as part of the unit with Brian's class. We are also going back to China, which has been a few years. We're excited to send a group back to China. And you can see there's an incredible array of these experiences for students. The other piece that happens in the middle school is the social impact and leadership projects and our Impact Summit, which is this wonderful capstone for their middle school experience. And I have just a few examples. Most important thing for you to know is March 18th. Come, it'll be in this space. It is worth it to come and watch the students talk about the work that they're doing, and how are they asking that, what are they answering the question for what matters to you, what are you doing about it? Just a couple of examples. Rourke, just a few days ago, led the third grade field trip to the Magical Bridges playground in Palo Alto. And so that's a playground, it's an accessible playground, and that the third grade for years has studied issues of accessibility and difference and in all different ways. And Rourke, when he was in third grade, I think they were actually the first group to go to that site. And so he was really excited to kind of like close that loop and come back and with a group of students now take them and be an expert and help them understand the meaning of that playground. Last night at the concert, Angela she created the program for the concert, and it was tied to she was the SDG 16, which is actually about peace and justice, and she named it around how do you create a middle school environment that's kind and caring. And so the arc of the songs was kind of tracking what does it feel like to be a middle schooler, and how do you end up in a space where you create a positive middle school culture. And then finally, there's a couple of middle schoolers, Jojo and Mila, who are doing a middle school mural about belonging, and they're in the process of designing that. Many of you hopefully have seen the mural in the first and second grade, the underwater, which is that fabulous underwater mural. And so they're really excited to do a similar kind of mural, but really to speak to our commitment to community belonging. Who I am matters, who you are matters, who we are together makes a difference in the world, and to do that from a student perspective. In the upper school, one of the great new programs we have for our 9th and 10th graders is something called Hex Block, which is the Hillbrook Experiential Block. And this is an array of the organizations that our students have interacted with this year. These are all within no more than a mile, I guess a few are about 2 miles, but all within the radius of the upper school campus. Most of them they can get to by walking. And it's this chance to actually get out into the community and really engage with the greater San Jose area. This will lead to a 11th grade capstone project, which is going to involve, again, similar to the 8th grade, but now at an 11th grade level, a very detailed literature review in the fall, where they're going to do an academic understanding of a topic that matters to them. And then in the spring, they will be out looking for internships and other opportunities to engage in the community. So we're really, again, one of the things that we are so excited about with the addition of the high school is the chance to take these programs that are so powerful in the middle school and then see what they look like 2, 3, 4 years later. And then finally, another program that people may or may not be familiar with is our fellowship program. And so this is actually a program that is for all high schoolers, not just Hillbrook high schoolers. And in particular, some of these students who weren't able to go to our high school because it didn't exist yet. Kelsey's a senior in high school, and so she couldn't have gone to Hillbrook High School 4 years ago. Kelsey has been doing a fellowship that's actually involved her circling back. So Kelsey's passion is the ocean, and I'll let her speak to it.
I think it is so important for people to find what they care about, especially at a young age, because we really need people to solve different problems in the world. Originally, what mattered to me was the ocean and ocean advocacy and nature. And I eventually started making my books from that point on because I wanted to raise awareness about the different issues that the oceans were facing. But throughout this time, I started thinking about how could I share my knowledge for how to write a book to other people. So the organization that I am starting is called Authors for Nature, and it helps young adults create children's books that advocate for environmental issues. Authors for Nature uses a mix of video courses that I create from my process and AI mentors that help people through each step of the process.
Kelsey, in addition to doing that, is actually working with a couple of our students, our 8th graders, as part of their SIL project. So there's these wonderful full circle moments where students who experienced something when they were younger are then able to circle back and work with younger students and get at that next level. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for a few minutes to Colleen.
Oh, great, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Colleen Schilly. I'm the Associate Head of School here at Hillbrook. This is my 10th year at the school. And my core responsibilities are steering many of the strategic projects of the school, some of the things that you're hearing about tonight, managing the projects that help those things grow, and working to collaborate and facilitate the work across our program leadership team and our operation leadership team. And so our second major area of emphasis for Vision 2030 is deepening Hillbrook's roots as a community hub, one that's characterized by connection, belonging, and engagement for students and for families and parents. This strategic effort, as Mark named earlier, is fueled by Hillbrook's commitment to community and belonging, where we share the optimistic and confident belief that who I am matters, who you are matters, and who we are together can make a difference in the world. I'm excited to share a little bit, first and foremost, about one of the ways this is really impacting students. Certainly we care about the commitment to community and belonging for the experience of adults in our community, but the reason we're here together is for the student experience. And there's maybe no developmental age and stage where connection and engagement is more critical than middle school. And so Thrively is a digital tool that the middle school team has been piloting for the last couple years. And it's an alternative way for students to share information about their experience with their advisors and their teachers. We all know and can remember that middle school's sensitive time. It's full of changes, it's full of highs, it's full of lows. And advisory is often a safe space where students can talk with adults in their lives that matter to them and their peers. And sometimes having the opportunity to share something quietly online feels more comfortable to students. And so Thrively is a tool that allows for a digital check-in. It allows students to send either a clear or sometimes very subtle flag to their teachers that something's feeling a little bit off. Teaching teams keep a really close eye on how students' patterns are changing over time and use that as a way to initiate connection with students. Students rate their sense on maybe a couple times a week, their sense of connection, their sense of belonging, and their sense of well-being. And every individual student's rating is different. On any given day, a particular student might be feeling great and rate consistently as a 7. But we would know that if that student then trickled down to a 5, that meant that someone should check in with them. And so the teaching and leadership teams are using this in real time to help support students. And it's a remarkable additional tool to promote belonging and to provide supports in a quick way for kids when they need it. Additionally, I'm going to take this opportunity to plug our coffee hour event for next Friday. Here on the Los Gatos campus, Mark will be facilitating a conversation. A panel of high school students will be here from our upper school to talk about their experiences in middle school. There will be a mixture of students who came through Hillbrook's middle school and also some students who are now Potter Row High School who came from other middle schools. And they'll be able to share with anyone who attends information about the things that they remember being real highs and lows in middle school, things that they remember feeling like a really big deal in middle school that now with some hindsight they might recognize are not so big of a deal, and some wisdom and advice for middle school parents. And so if that feels like something that's relevant and interesting for you, we hope that you come. And so we also care about the adult experience of connection and community at Hillbrook, and we've done a number of different things this year to continue building that community. We're continuing our efforts to design experiences for families to get connected in ways that are accessible and feel right to you. We recognize that every individual family's availability, their appetite, and their interests are unique. And we've continued our weekly coffee hours this year on the Los Gatos campus every Friday morning. We've also expanded our offerings in downtown San Jose to monthly Monday coffees. You can check out our upcoming offerings on the flyer down at the reception afterwards. And we have a handful of unspecified or dates coming up that do not have topics yet. And so there's a very easy 3-second survey here. If you want to provide input on what an upcoming topic might be, we'd welcome your feedback. We want these topics and coffee hours to be relevant to you. This year we've also hosted instructional rounds, both for small community groups and then open to anyone in the community. We hosted our first community-wide instructional round event in December, and we'll have another one in April. And this is an opportunity for a more long-form way for families to hear a presentation from school leaders about an area of our program, and then to spend some time observing in classrooms. These are unscripted. Teachers do not prepare special activities to present to families on these observations. This is a chance for you to see what the student experience is like, live and in real time. And if that sounds interesting to you, we hope you keep your eye on Hillbrook Happenings to RSVP. It's a really excellent way to see what the student experience is really like. And finally, civic dinners continue to be one of the ways that the Scott Center prioritizes supporting our commitment to community and belonging. These are small and informal gatherings that are facilitated by a member of the school community. And they often revolve around questions like, what's a formative memory you have from high school? Or what's something you remember, or something that you have read or listened to or watched recently that has had an impact on you, big or small? And so if that experience sounds interesting to you, I encourage you to reach out to our director of the Scott Center for Social Entrepreneurship, Annie, to learn more. There are ways that we would love to include you in attending or hosting one of those. On that note, the Scott Center, we this year had the pleasure of welcoming Haley Hem as our community engagement and program lead, and she's been able to lead a number of really interesting efforts to involve families more in the work of identifying what matters to you and your family, and what are you doing about it, and how can we partner with you to do something about it. She's led some events this year, like the Bird Bio Blitz at Stanford, where kids as young as kindergarten and their families were observing, counting, and participating in a number of activities with families from across the Bay Area. Additionally, students and parents have been engaged in a book club called What If We Get It Right? And it explores the way that big ideas and bold collective action can create a more equitable and sustainable future, and gives students and families together the tools to think with optimism about what's possible. So if that sounds like something you need, I encourage you to get involved. And in the fall, middle and upper school students hosted a pop-up shop at the Silicon Valley African Film Festival's African Market. And they are showcasing some of the things that they sold down at the reception. So you can take a look afterwards to see some of and meet Haley as well if you haven't. So as you can see, there are many pathways for students and families to connect around what matters to them and expand their exposure in growing to what might continue to matter to them. Hopefully you've seen that our summer programs are open. We've continued to hear feedback from families, and one of the things that was very clear in Vision 2030 was how much families are eager for Hillbrook to be as much of a one-stop shop as possible. We were able to open our summer registration this year earlier than ever before, and we continue to expand our summer program offerings. We now have full-day offerings, which was not something we were able to offer when we were only on one campus, but now extending across 2 campuses, we can provide summer camp for full day. And we continue to expand the offerings. And if there's something you're hoping to see either this year or future year, I hope you reach out to me or to Nicole Kabarlak to share that hope. We can't always act on things right away, but we can start to keep track of those so that we can continue developing these programs to serve the needs of what we know are very complicated and busy lives of families in our community. And finally, I know that many of you responded to our biennial survey that was administered in the fall. Thank you if you were able to respond to that. We work with an external firm, Mission and Data, to collate and analyze those results, and they are working on that now for us. We hope that you'll make time to one of these events in the spring to come and hear the high-level takeaways from the community that will inform the work that we prioritize next for the next year, for the next 2 years, that's connected to our strategic plan. Your feedback matters, and it's something that we take really seriously, and we'll spend time thinking about this spring as we look to build out our map for strategic work in the coming months.
Great. One quick thing connected to that. Bavit 2 days ago was in this, or 3 days ago, was in this room for the coffee, and we were, and he had the suggestion of seeing if we can have pickup basketball for parents at the gym in downtown. And we were like, that's a great idea, Bavit. He's like, I'm willing to help organize it. So look out for that. But I mentioned that as, again, it's just another one of these great, opportunities, and like many of us, is looking for ways to build community. So we are eager to hear parent suggestions, particularly when they are willing to help us coordinate it. And if you don't play basketball, you're gonna have to come up with other types of activities. We can do that too. I don't actually really play basketball, but I'll show up and cheer. I'll come and cheer. The last broad pillar is around broadening our impact. And this is this notion of like, I think we as a school, and this has always been true, certainly over the last 20, 25 years, as a school, like we serve this community. Our primary focus is on this community, and we also know that we're increasingly a school that has a broader reach than that. And just like as we talk with students about reaching beyond, as a school, we like to think about how do we reach beyond. First, focusing on the internal, one of the things that came out loud and clear in the conversations over the course of the year as we were putting together Vision 2030 is the need to try to figure out the long-term financial model for not just our school, but for independent schools broadly. And so what does that mean? First and foremost, tuition pays for teacher and employee salaries. And like that is the far and away the largest percentage of what tuition goes to. And we live in an incredibly expensive area. That is no secret to any of you. And so we know it's really important that we pay competitive salaries. Linked to that, at the far end, we are increasingly in a new peer set of schools as we shift from a JK-8 in Los Gatos to a JK-12 that is serving a much broader reach, a number of families coming down from the peninsula. We are increasingly competing against schools and teacher salaries that are higher. And we want to be able to compete in that pool. We want to be able to have the best possible teachers here, and we don't want salary to be the reason that they don't choose us. And so that remains an incredibly high priority for the school. At the same time, we also know that each of you here is feeling the financial pinch of tuition. And so we're constantly thinking about how do you, those two things are in tension. And so how do we resolve that? We have a really thoughtful board of trustees. That's one of those where the board is very involved with me and the leadership team thinking about like, how do we set this long-term vision that both ensures we're able to provide competitive salaries, great programs, and try to remain accessible to families. A big piece of that, of course, is through flexible tuition, and so how do we make sure that we continue to have a robust flexible tuition program, and in particular, a program that is growing and something that has been near and dear to the Hillbrook for a long time is the idea of the Reach Beyond Scholars. And so while the program itself is relatively new, the notion of being able to serve a broad range of students is not. And so for those who don't know, our Reach Beyond Scholars is a program for 6th through 12th grade in which students are receiving essentially full flexible tuition. And then wraparound services to make sure that they can be part of our community, and that for many of these students, they're the first students in their families to go to college. And when you read studies about like the impact on families, one of the biggest ways that you can help an entire family change its quality of life is to have their children go to college. And so like this matters. And so again, this is a program that is near and dear to the school's heart and is something that we are deeply committed to as a core part of what we created when we created the upper school. So all of those things, those are complicated things, and they're things that we spend a lot of time thinking about and trying to find the balance of those tensions. On a lighter note, one of the things we're very excited about, and with the Scott Center, is the ability to create new programs that bring in a broader community, including our own community. Conversations for Good is actually sold out. So we are very excited. It's a future of well-being. There are several people in this audience who are going to be part of Conversations for Good. As speakers, we also have some outside speakers, but it's a broad look at well-being. Everything from looking at some people talking about medical innovations, innovations in agriculture, and then also just tying that back to like what does it look like to be healthy and well today, and to loops back right back to what Denise Pope and Challenge Success are talking about, right? Like what does it look like for people to have and for students to be well. This summer, we are excited. This is a way that as educators, we are reaching out. Mike, in his role as upper school head and somebody who's been long tied to the Tidelines Institute, we will be a part of with a small group of schools, including Andover, Punahou, Lakeside, no, not Lakeside, Nueva, And Northfield, Mount Herman, like these are some of the leading schools in the country, and we along with those schools will be meeting up at the Tidelines Institute again. This is the place where the 9th graders went last spring and will continue to go. A group of educators will be going there to think about like how do you continue to expand this work and make climate education accessible to a broader group of students. On the on the ground floor here, we are super excited to be in the Armory. This has obviously been a huge piece of our growth as a school, is like getting into our 2 buildings. So we're in the Arts and Athletic Center now, and the Moyer building will be open. It is moving along really well. In fact, we will be opening tours up later this spring. So we will have both buildings open and the full campus running next fall. That has been a huge amount of work. Again, that's a place that the board has been incredible partners for our leadership team, particularly Margaret, in her role has been really driving that work. A big piece of the upper school has also been a capital campaign, which has been mostly quietly happening in the background, and we're being a little less quiet about it as we reach near towards the final part. But we are at 85% towards a goal of $15 million. We have received so many gifts, and so many of them are people who it's their largest gift that they have ever given to the school. And in many cases, the largest gift they have ever given to a philanthropic cause. So people believe in this, and they're helping us make this project possible through their incredible generosity. Recently, we've also had some really inspiring gifts from some alum families. We had an alum family who gave us $250,000, whose kids are long graduated. They hadn't given to the school in a number of years. They came and they toured, and they were just so moved by what was happening at this JK-12. And again, they see that ability to like what's happening here on this campus, and then what that looks like as it extends to the high school, and they're just so excited to support future generations of children, even though it won't necessarily impact them and their family. And then finally, enrollment. And enrollment is going incredibly well. So in our, just a couple of numbers, right now for our junior kindergarten, we have 9 applicants for each spot. For the remaining seats after sibling enrollment. Our current, the applications are not done yet, but almost done, 125% increase in applications to 6th grade. And then for 9th grade, we have 2 times the number of external applications for 9th grade as we had last year. People outside of Hillbrook are excited about being here. A number of you are here who are new families in the last couple of years. This is an exciting place to be, and the energy that's happening as we go through this incredible transformation across the school, and our JK all the way up to our 10th grade now, and very soon it'll be 12th grade, is really exciting to be part of. So what's next? More conversations about purpose and challenge and meaning, conversations about going back to where we started this, why does this matter? Because we know that students being engaged matters. We know that students being known matters. That has always been true. And then conversations about how we can continue to grow and broaden our reach as a school. And in honor of, this is my favorite movie of the year. We like to think we're defying gravity right now. And we hope that you are along for the ride. So thank you so much for coming this evening to learn a little bit about the things that we're working on and the things that we're excited about. Please stay around. We have a reception, and happy to answer any questions or just connect with people. So thanks again for joining us tonight. Oh.